Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the co-founder of Popcorn. Sort of doing this like spur of the moment. This is like one month prior to our liquidity event, so there's a bit of madness going off on all cylinders at the moment. But happy to walk you through like what we're working on and basically like the vision that we um, are basically wanting to like help materialize right now. It's something that we saw at the end of like 2020 with like the development of DeFi and how much wealth was being generated in DeFi and like what we could do beyond just generating all of that additional wealth and allocating it to doing good. So um, a brief intro on myself. I started working in crypto in 2017. I actually worked on a project called EQ where we funded bio R&D projects, and we did so through tokenizing IP, putting it on IPFS, and using those tokens as a funding and licensing mechanism. So I worked on the sort of like first iterations of ERC 1155. So before like NFT was the NFT. So contributed some work there, but yeah, it was a very kind of like sort of like uphill project that was going up against pharma. Then in retrospect, it was I think it was inevitably doomed because just who we're going after and trying to take down an industry that not only did we think was so evil, but was so powerful. It was just and also like creating a DAO framework in 2017 where like everything was sort of like theoretical and like everyone was trying to figure out exactly like how it works. And you only really had like MakerDAO or like the beginnings of Aragon sort of coming to fruition. So I think the project was like a bit too early, but it was a super interesting ride and learned a lot, made a lot of friends and peers over the years working in the Ethereum ecosystem. And now things are getting like very interesting because we're going into like an L2 and alternative sort of like layer one base layer world, especially in DeFi. So wherever there's cheaper gas fees, whatever's the more efficient chain, if it's an L2 or if it's Solana or Phantom, what have you, it's going to get very interesting for like multi-chain and DeFi. But just going back a bit further, I come from a traditional finance background. I used to work in Credit Suisse and private banking, switched over to SAP to merchandising and then corporate strategy. So worked in the corporate world for almost like 10 years. And then in 2016, I stumbled upon 2016, I stumbled upon the Ethereum white paper. Actually, now that I think about it, I think, yeah. So my friend introduced me to Bitcoin in 2012. And I remember saying, this is stupid. It doesn't work. This makes no sense without even like reading anything. And that same friend actually introduced me to the Ethereum white paper. And the way I understood it was you could program Bitcoin. I mean, from when I first read the white paper, and then I read it like however many times after that, and then it became clear. I was like, okay, you can create these token economies, you can use this to raise capital. Very good mechanism to decentralize a network. And yeah, been in the ecosystem for almost 5 years now, I guess. And Popcorn and like the concept of like high yield, high impact came about, going back to what I was saying initially, it stems from everything that we saw was happening with Yearn and Compound and Uniswap and all these sort of like Lego pieces that were becoming available to everyone. And like you didn't have to go to a bank to take out a loan. You could literally take out a loan for however much on like Aave within like 10 seconds if you had your collateral. If you had Ethereum or in at this moment in time you can collateralize essentially like any ERC20. And this is even like this has evolved onto like other chains as well. So we saw all that, and it was like interesting how there was just so much wealth being created. And sort of like in the same vein as my last project, I wanted to work on something that really could like make an impact on the world. We started EQ because we thought pharma was just a completely evil like industry, just like shelving patents for like years. And then basically waiting for like new drugs to come on board that were like much cheaper. It's like didn't make any sense. And so this idea of like, okay, so if we could use DeFi and just extract sort of like a fee simultaneously that's sort of negligible to like a negligible cost to the user, while still being able to provide like this DeFi magic and you getting these extraordinary yields that even like on the lowest threshold of like 10 to 15% is already like 10x, even more than 10x than what you get on like a traditional savings account. And if we can allocate those fees to a rewards contract and then distribute it to these impact organizations or nonprofits, what have you, in a decentralized way, that's like a pretty powerful idea. And then when we think about actually how you set it up through smart contracts, it's really not that difficult. And so the question was like, how has this not been created? This questioning basically led us to landing on like the opportunity of pioneering ESG in DeFi. So like what we've built and like in how we see DeFi for good playing out is that, it sort of like lies in the intersection of like ESG, wealth management, and crypto. So like in crypto, you have digital assets that you can use to lend, to leverage up, to put into these automated like asset strategy contracts like a Yearn does, and these other DeFi protocols, and creating a product that basically uses those like DeFi mechanisms to address ESG and, basically go after impact organizations that fall into like the ESG bucket while providing for like a wealth management solution all in one. That was something that we wanted to create and essentially have created now. And so like Popcorn kind of lies in the intersection of these three buckets. And if you take a look at the DeFi landscape as of now, so I'm sure most of you, if you have been following DeFi the last last almost 2 years now, you'll recognize these protocols on here. So like Maker, Aave, Compound. So the blue chip lending, DEX, and like Asset DAO protocols have billions in TVL. They're really good for their like specific purposes. So like Aave is fantastic for lending your crypto assets. Uniswap and Curve are great decentralized exchanges. And then, Yearn and Badger are great asset DAOs. And these are all DAOs. Like they're all run by like the token holders. And they provide very like lucrative yields for their users. But when we did our sort of due diligence on the competitive landscape, none of them addressed ESG. None of them like created like basically like a fund that could be allocated towards doing good. So funding social impact organizations, nonprofits, or charitable organizations. So that being said, there are other sort of like mission-driven projects that have popped up in the last like several months that are specifically addressing like climate change, and have also like funded impact organizations as well. Even like centralized exchanges like Binance and FTX like earmark funds for nonprofits. So it exists, but in terms of using DeFi for good and sort of like addressing ESG, didn't exist, still doesn't really exist, and it's a great opportunity because I think we can all agree that if you have been standing on the sidelines and watching the crypto market, you've been trying to figure out, okay, how do I get in? And then there is this like there's a big like friction point. It's like, okay, what do I do? Like set up like a Web3 wallet. I need MetaMask, or I need Phantom wallet to like plug into Solana. So just given like right now we just finished up our pre-sale and we had several like family offices that want to come on board, but they literally had no idea how to buy Ethereum. Like they didn't even know how to like set up a Gemini or Coinbase account, and then basically set up an Ethereum address on MetaMask to then receive like the pop that we wanted to distribute. And it just became like very apparent, and like this was already part of the thesis, that there's this gigantic demographic that's going to be onboarded. And if you compare like basically like the US fixed income retail like bond market, in terms of how those assets are relatable to like DeFi products, something like what we've built with Popcorn, even like a fraction of that market economically like justifies like what we're doing. And so that very much is a strong argument that, this is like very early stage, and like we are actually capable of building like products that, infrastructurally aren't really like that difficult conceptually speaking. But I mean, getting a community behind it is a whole other like ball game. And so, yeah, I mean, so for Popcorn, like we very much roll up into this asset strategy bucket, where I think over like 20 billion in TVL currently exists. And like we've seen what's been happening with like DeFi and how much TVL has been, accumulating. I think it's over 200 billion right now. So it's very like apparent that what we can do with smart contracts is do the DeFi magic, and while we do the DeFi magic, we can simultaneously fund social impact organizations. And this is just like a schematic of like what we've set up, but I mean, this is something that isn't so like groundbreaking. And it's interesting because if you think about it, it's like, okay, so this is essentially how a lot of these DAOs, lending DACs or like asset DAOs are like set up. The one part that's missing though is the beneficiary part. So like, when we create like yield generating smart contracts, these protocols, they extract a fee, and then those fees flow back to the DAO, and they flow to the stakeholders of the protocol. So we recreated the same thing, but just tacked on like the beneficiary bucket. So beneficiaries are receiving the fees based on these configurable smart contract parameters that the DAO votes on. So at a minimum, 20% of the fees will be going to the beneficiaries, and then the DAO can vote on how exactly, how high those fees can go, and so the whole thing becomes sort of like gamified. But ultimately, users can come to Popcorn, they generate a yield, they charge a fee, and the fees are distributed to stakeholders. And ultimately, what we're trying to do with this setup, which, like I said, isn't so groundbreaking, but in terms of what we're addressing and the community that we've built and we're continuing to build, and like as of like last week, it's been pretty exciting because like it seems like the word got out. We're trying to become one of the largest benefactors of social good in the world. And by 2023, given the products that we're going to be releasing, we expect to get 10% market share, which will allow us to get 50% of Popcorn fees to beneficiaries, which is equivalent to like $20 million. So, the high impact, the high yield, high impact, I guess, like title of like this presentation it's very much relevant and something that we can definitely accomplish really just by like configuring a smart contract in a very simple way, redistributing fees to essentially a rewards contract, being able to do all of the things that like Yearn, Compound, Uniswap, SushiSwap do, leverage up, offer like higher risk profile DeFi products, and just have a part of it that is automated to impact organizations. And that's basically all we've done. And I would actually even recommend any platform that currently exists that I showed on the competitive landscape slide to do the same thing. So the problem is though, with a lot of those competitors is that they are DAOs. And like if you are a token holder, you're going into those protocols specifically because like you like their products, you want to generate yield. And so it's just sort of like retroactively fit in like an ESG model into these DAOs would be very difficult. And then I guess that's like the differentiator with Popcorn, is that from the get-go, from everything to our products, to the PR, to the ambassadors and the people involved, we've baked social good into our contracts, and very much are addressing this ESG demographic and market that's clearly a huge sector in finance, number one, and number two is very much getting interested in getting involved into crypto. So that's what we've built with Popcorn, something that we're excited to share with the world, and you'll be able to get into our liquidity event in November, which I guess is next month. And yeah, you can follow all of our updates on Twitter. You can email me if you have any questions. My email is right there. And yeah, that's